I am the greatest. I said that even before I knew I was. Muhammad Ali didn't just fight with his fists. He fought with his words. Long before he held any title, before the world even knew his name, he declared his greatness. People called him arrogant, delusional, but history proved otherwise. Ali wasn't just predicting his future, he was programming it. He didn't just defeat opponents in the ring, he broke through mental limits. Most people don't even realize they're trapped in. This video is about that kind of power, the kind that's already in you, hidden in the words you speak every day. By the end of this video, you won't just understand how language shapes your thoughts, your emotions, and even your body. You'll know exactly how to use it to reshape your life. Think of this like unlocking a tool you've had all along, but never realized could change everything. And whatever you do, don't leave before part 9. That's where we give you the most practical, easy-to-follow practice. A 21-day method to reprogram your thinking, shift your emotions, and start seeing real results. It's simple, it's actionable, and it works, especially if you start the moment this video ends. If you're ready to stop speaking from limitation and start speaking from intention, this is your moment. Like this video, if you're ready to take your words seriously, comment with the one phrase you're committed to changing in your life, starting today, and hit subscribe so you don't miss out on more tools like this, because one sentence, said the right way, at the right time, can change everything. What if every word you spoke had power, not in a magical way, but in a real, everyday way that shapes how you think, feel, and act? That idea isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. In fact, ancient texts already pointed to this. In the Bible, the Gospel of John begins with the phrase, "In the beginning was the Word." It's not just a poetic line, it reflects a deep understanding that language has the power to create, define, and shape reality. Modern science gives this old idea new meaning. From psychology to neuroscience, research shows that the words we use don't just express our thoughts, they help form them. For example, if you describe a tough day as hell, your brain responds as if it truly was a painful experience. But if you say it was challenging, your brain takes it as something to work through. Same day, different words, completely different mental response. This connection between language and the brain is at the heart of something called neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. The idea behind NLP is that the words and phrases we repeat, out loud or in our heads, can actually program how we think and behave. So when you constantly say things like, "I always mess up," or "I'm not smart enough," you're training your brain to believe and act on that. It becomes a loop. Religious and spiritual practices have tapped into this power for centuries. Think about mantras, prayers, or affirmations. They're not random, they're repeated with intention. And now we know that repetition of certain words can change neural pathways in the brain. That's not magic, it's biology. So, let's go back to that question. If each word you spoke carried weight, would you speak differently? Would you talk to yourself with more care? Because whether we notice it or not, every word leaves a mark on our minds, our relationships, and even how we see the world. The human brain is far more adaptable than we used to think. For a long time, scientists believed that once the brain was fully developed, it stayed more or less the same. But modern neuroscience tells a different story, one of flexibility, rewiring, and ongoing change. This ability of the brain to change its structure and function in response to experience is called neuroplasticity, and one of the most powerful tools that shapes this change, the words we use, especially the words we repeat to ourselves. Let's break it down. Every time you think a thought, especially one wrapped in language, it activates certain neural pathways. If that thought is repeated often enough, those pathways become stronger, faster, and more automatic. This is why habits of thought, especially negative ones, can feel hard to break. They've literally carved grooves into the brain's wiring. But the good news is, they're not permanent. With awareness and intentional language, those pathways can be redirected. Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz, a neuroscientist and psychiatrist at UCLA, did groundbreaking work with patients suffering from obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. In his research, he taught patients to recognize their obsessive thoughts, label them for what they were. This is just a false signal from my brain, and then actively shift their attention, using more constructive internal dialogue. Over time, patients not only experienced fewer compulsions, but brain scans showed real, measurable changes in brain activity. In other words, by changing the words they used in their inner world, they literally rewired their brains. This doesn't just apply to clinical conditions. Take a more everyday example. Imagine two university students with similar intelligence and academic backgrounds. One faces a tough exam and tells herself, "This is too hard. I'm probably going to fail." The other says, "This is tough, but I'll figure it out step by step." Neurologically, their brains react differently. The first triggers stress responses, tension, avoidance, and fear. The second activates areas linked to problem solving and resilience. Over time, these differences stack up, not because one student is better, but because their language shaped their mindset, which shaped their behavior, which shaped their outcomes. And this idea doesn't stop at science. Spiritual traditions have emphasized the energy of words. For centuries, in Hinduism, mantras, sacred sounds or phrases, are used to focus the mind and connect with deeper consciousness. In Buddhism, the concept of verbal karma reminds us that speech carries weight, not just morally, but energetically. What you say influences not only others, but your own inner state. Whether we look at it through the lens of science or spirituality, the message is clear. Language matters, not in a vague, feel-good way, but in a concrete, physiological sense. Your brain listens when you speak, to others, but especially to yourself. So when you casually say, "I'm such an idiot" after a small mistake, or when you dismiss your own goals as unrealistic, you're not just being self-critical, you're reinforcing a pathway that makes it easier to doubt yourself next time. On the flip side, intentionally choosing more constructive words doesn't mean lying to yourself or being blindly positive. It means practicing a kind of mental hygiene, catching harmful patterns, and replacing them with ones that help you grow. It's not about ignoring difficulty, it's about choosing how to frame it. So next time you talk to yourself, pay attention, because every word is a choice, and over time, those choices shape the brain you live with. Your inner voice is with you more than anyone else. It narrates your thoughts, reacts to your experiences, judges your mistakes, and shapes how you see yourself and the world. This silent conversation, your self-talk, isn't just background noise. It's a powerful force that influences your mood, your decisions, your confidence, and your overall worldview. From early childhood, we begin forming this inner voice by absorbing the language used around us. If a child repeatedly hears things like, "You're not good at that," or "You'll never get it right," those phrases don't stay external for long. Over time, they become internalized, forming what psychologists call core beliefs. These beliefs are deep-seated ideas about who we are, and once they take root, they act like filters. A child who believes, "I'm not smart enough," will grow into an adult who doubts themselves before even trying. Behavioral psychology supports this. Our patterns of thought tend to mirror the language and tone we were exposed to. And once those mental patterns form, we tend to repeat them, reinforcing them further. That's why self-talk matters. It's not just commentary. It becomes identity. The idea that repeated language can shape self-perception is backed by research. Psychologist Claude Steele, through his work on self-affirmation theory, found that when people repeat positive affirmations that align with their values, their stress responses drop and their performance in challenging situations improves. Over time, the brain begins to accept these repeated affirmations as part of the individual's reality. But let's pause for a reality check. Does this mean all positive self-talk works? Can you just look in the mirror, say, "I'm amazing," and suddenly become more confident? Not quite. The truth is, not all affirmations are effective. Words only stick when they're backed by real emotion and believable context. If you say something that feels completely false, your brain resists it. You might even feel worse. For example, someone deeply insecure who tells themselves, "I love everything about myself," without believing a word of it, may actually reinforce the gap between where they are and where they wish they were. The brain knows when you're faking it. So what does work? Self-talk that's grounded in truth and paired with action. Instead of, "I'm perfect," it's more powerful to say, "I'm learning to accept myself more each day," or "I can improve with effort." These phrases feel real. They open the door to growth, instead of pretending you've already arrived. And that emotional tone matters too. Studies show that when positive self-statements are delivered with emotion and reinforced through behavior, small actions that align with the words, they begin to rewire beliefs. It's not about sugarcoating reality. It's about creating a new, believable narrative that helps you move forward instead of holding you back. Here's the takeaway. Your inner voice is shaping your life story, whether you realize it or not. It can be your biggest critic or your quiet supporter. It doesn't mean lying to yourself or forcing optimism. It means being aware of what you're saying in your head, especially the things you say often, and asking whether those words are helping or hurting you. Because if your inner voice is with you 24/7, wouldn't you rather it be a voice that builds you up instead of one that breaks you down? In a 2005 interview, Jim Carrey told a story that's become almost legendary. Before he was famous, broke and struggling in Los Angeles, he wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered. He dated it 5 years into the future and kept it in his wallet. At the time, it sounded crazy even to him, but he paired that act with daily visualizations, emotional commitment, and hard work. 5 years later, he landed a $10 million role in Dumb and Dumber. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe it's one of the clearest examples of what people now call the law of attraction. At the core of this idea is a belief that your thoughts, words, and emotions emit a kind of energy, a frequency that can influence what you attract into your life. It's a concept often dismissed as too mystical for science, yet more and more research is bridging the gap. One of the key links is emotion. Words alone don't change the brain. Emotionally charged words do. Think about it. If someone says, "I'm happy," in a flat tone, do you believe them? Probably not. That's because your brain looks for congruence between message and emotional signal. When words lack emotional energy, the brain tends to ignore or reject them as irrelevant or false. In other words, emotion is the fuel that makes language stick and makes it powerful. Dr. Andrew Newberg, a neuroscientist at Thomas Jefferson University, has studied the effects of language on the brain using MRI scans. His research shows that words like love, peace, and gratitude activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain involved in joy, focus, and decision-making. On the flip side, negative words like hate or stupid can trigger the amygdala, which is tied to stress and fear. This isn't philosophical, it's neurological. The words we use literally shift the chemical and electrical activity in our brain. When repeated with emotional weight, they start to shape how we experience reality. This is why affirmations, mantras, and even motivational speeches can have a real effect if they're emotionally aligned. Repeating, "I'm successful," without any belief or feeling behind it, doesn't do much. But saying it while feeling even a small sense of possibility starts to move something inside. It builds a new emotional association, a spark of belief, and if repeated with intention, that spark can grow. So here comes the controversial question. What about positive deception? Should we tell ourselves things we don't fully believe yet, just to feel better or get unstuck? In many therapeutic and coaching circles, the answer is yes if it serves as a bridge. It's not about lying to yourself forever. It's about using language as a stepping stone toward a higher emotional and mental state. For someone stuck in depression or self-doubt, jumping straight to "I love my life" might feel fake. But saying, "I'm learning to feel better," or "I'm open to change," is a softer, more believable shift. It opens a door. Positive self-talk becomes harmful only when it's used to deny or suppress real issues. But when it's used deliberately, paired with small action and emotional honesty, it becomes a tool of transformation. It helps us raise our inner frequency, our emotional baseline, so that we can make better decisions, take more aligned actions, and attract better outcomes. That's the law of attraction with a scientific edge. At the end of the day, words aren't magic on their own. It's the emotion behind them, the consistency in how we use them, and the intention we bring that gives them power. So whether you believe in quantum energy fields or just care about brain chemistry, the message is the same. Speak with emotion, speak with care, and when needed, speak your way into the version of yourself you want to become, even if you're not quite there yet. Words don't just land in your mind, they echo through your entire body. Every phrase, every sentence we speak or hear carries more than meaning. It carries chemistry. And the more we understand this, the more control we gain over our inner state, our relationships, and even our health. Let's look at what happens inside us when language hits. When you're exposed to harsh, negative words, think, "You're useless," "I can't," or "This is hopeless." Your brain immediately shifts into defense mode. The amygdala, your internal alarm system, lights up. That triggers the release of cortisol, the body's main stress hormone. It was designed to help you run from lions. But today, it's often activated by something far less dramatic. A cruel comment, a moment of self-doubt, a careless insult. High cortisol doesn't just make you feel stressed. It hijacks your ability to think clearly. It narrows focus, reduces memory recall, and makes you more reactive. You become more likely to make impulsive decisions or shut down entirely. Stay in that state long enough, and the body starts to adapt to it by treating stress as normal. And that's how chronic anxiety, burnout, and even depression quietly take root. Now flip the script. When you hear something encouraging, "I believe in you," "You've got this," or "I'm proud of you," your brain responds with an entirely different cocktail. Dopamine surges, bringing motivation and energy. Serotonin rises, creating calm, balance, and emotional stability. These aren't just feel-good chemicals. They're performance enhancers. They improve your focus, increase your resilience, and make it easier to stay grounded in difficult situations. In fact, Dr. Andrew Newberg, a neuroscientist and author of Words Can Change Your Brain, used MRI scans to track how language affects the brain. His research showed that positive words, especially those tied to love, gratitude, or hope, light up regions of the brain linked to joy and reasoning. In contrast, negative words consistently triggered fear and emotional shutdown. This isn't philosophy, it's physiology. This is why one sentence can change your whole day. You know this already. Think about the difference between someone suddenly snapping, "You're so stupid," and someone pausing, looking you in the eye, and saying, "I believe you can do it." You don't just hear those words. You feel them. One spikes your heart rate and makes your stomach churn. The other grounds you, softens your breath, and invites courage. That's the power of language as a biological event. And this isn't just about how we talk to others. It's about how we talk to ourselves. Every internal sentence, especially the ones we repeat, trains the body to either tighten or relax, contract or expand. Your self-talk over time becomes your emotional baseline. You're either living in a body that's bracing for attack, or one that's wired for clarity and trust. Buddha once warned, "Words are like arrows. Once released, they cannot be taken back." But what he didn't say, what neuroscience now confirms, is that sometimes the arrow turns back inward. The words we fling at others or at ourselves don't just vanish. They linger in the body. They sculpt the nervous system. So what's the takeaway? Speak like your health depends on it, because it does. Listen like your body's tuning in, because it is. And treat language not just as a tool for communication, but as a daily act of biology. Every word is a chemical choice. The more conscious we become of that, the more power we have to shape not just what we say, but how we live. Words don't just describe reality, they help create it. The way we speak, especially in high-pressure environments like sports, education, or the workplace, can directly influence outcomes, not just because of how others hear us, but because of how our own brain and body respond to what we say. In sports, coaches know this instinctively. Take the difference between telling an athlete, "Don't mess this up," versus "Focus on your rhythm." One creates tension, the other creates control. The words shape mindset, and mindset shapes performance. Serena Williams, for instance, has spoken about how self-talk during matches helps her stay composed under pressure. What she tells herself, out loud or silently, often changes the course of a game. In education, the impact of language is just as clear. Teachers who tell students "you're wrong" versus "let's try looking at it another way" create two entirely different emotional responses. The first can trigger shame and shutdown. The second keeps curiosity alive. Over time, students exposed to constructive, encouraging language develop greater confidence and resilience, not because they're naturally better, but because their environment helped program them to keep trying. In the business world, language is one of the most underrated leadership tools. Managers who use phrases like, "You failed to deliver," versus "Here's what didn't work. Let's find a solution," shape a culture of blame or a culture of growth. The difference isn't in the facts, it's in the framing. That framing affects morale, creativity, and retention. So how do we change the way we speak to create a better reality? One powerful method is learning how to shift language step by step, from negative to neutral to positive. This isn't about forced optimism or sugarcoating. It's about creating emotional safety and mental clarity. Take the sentence, "I'm afraid of failing." If that feels too heavy to shift into something like, "I'm going to succeed," try a middle ground. "I'm learning to face pressure more calmly." Or even, "I don't have the answer yet, but I'm open to learning." These shifts are small, but they matter, because when words change, body chemistry changes. And when the body feels safe, the brain performs better. This is backed by science. A study from Harvard Business School on the power pose phenomenon found that posture, combined with empowering self-talk, can influence hormone levels, raising testosterone, linked to confidence, and lowering cortisol, linked to stress. In other words, when you stand tall and say something strong, your body starts to believe you. You're not just pretending, you're practicing belief. Meanwhile, researchers at MIT found that the tone of voice is just as important as the content. In experiments about persuasion, speakers who used steady, confident vocal tones were more convincing, even when saying the exact same words as someone else. The voice isn't just a carrier of information, it's a signal of intent, and people respond more to intent than detail. All of this brings us back to one clear idea. The way you speak, both out loud and in your own head, can either reinforce fear or unlock potential. The shift doesn't require grand speeches or perfect affirmations. It starts with noticing your language, catching the automatic negative patterns, and gently steering them towards something more constructive. In a way, every conversation is a small act of architecture. With each word, you're building something, a belief, a reaction, a possibility. So the next time you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or doubtful, ask yourself, how can I say this differently? You might be surprised by how quickly your reality begins to change when your words do. The brain isn't wired to act on vague ideas. It needs clear direction. That's the core insight behind goal-setting theory, developed by psychologist Edwin Locke. According to this theory, specific and challenging goals lead to higher performance because they give the mind something concrete to focus on. It's the difference between drifting and driving. Take the common phrase, "I just want to be happy." Sounds noble, but it's too abstract for the brain to process as an actionable goal. Happiness is a state, not a step. On the other hand, "I will meditate for 15 minutes every morning," gives the brain something it can measure, repeat, and build on. The second sentence activates planning systems, primes behavior, and triggers a feedback loop. You know what to do. You know when you've done it. That's how momentum starts. But words don't just direct actions. They also shape the emotional tone of our goals. And one of the most powerful tools for shaping that tone is metaphor. We use metaphors all the time, often without realizing it. And the metaphors we choose reveal and influence how we feel about the challenges we face. Consider this. Someone says, "I'm drowning in debt." That metaphor implies helplessness, panic, and a loss of control. The brain absorbs that imagery and responds with stress. Now switch it to, "I'm climbing out of a financial valley," or "I'm pushing through a steep financial hill." Same reality, different metaphor, but now there's a sense of movement, effort, and possibility. The emotional tone shifts from despair to determination. Stanford researchers explored this idea. In a study about public opinion and crime, participants were given a report describing a city's crime problem, using one of two metaphors, crime as a beast or crime as a virus. Those who read about crime as a beast were more likely to suggest enforcement-heavy solutions, like more police or harsher punishment. Those who read about crime as a virus leaned toward prevention, fixing schools, addressing poverty. Just one metaphor changed how people thought about the problem and what they believed should be done about it. That's how powerful metaphor is. It doesn't just explain, it steers. It tells the brain what kind of story it's in. Are you fighting a war or healing a wound? Are you stuck in a storm or building a bridge? The words you use will cue your nervous system, your emotions, and your actions to follow. In setting goals for yourself, think about both clarity and framing. What do you actually want to do, and how are you describing it? Instead of saying, "I'm trying to get my life together," try, "I'm laying one brick a day toward the life I want." That's a metaphor you can live by. It's visual, grounded, and doable. So when you're stuck, overwhelmed, or unsure of what to do next, pause and look at your language. Is it vague or vivid? Is it passive or intentional? Are your metaphors working for you or against you? Your words are more than descriptions. They are mental architecture. They lay down the emotional and cognitive pathways. Your brain will follow, so choose them like a builder, not a bystander, because the story you tell yourself shapes the life you build next. In today's world, we no longer live in isolation. Not emotionally, not mentally, and certainly not digitally. The social space around us, especially on platforms like Facebook, TikTok, and X, formerly Twitter, has become an invisible force, shaping how we think, feel, and respond to life. Every scroll, every comment, every post is part of a vast conversation, and the language in that conversation matters more than we often realize. Social media isn't just a place where we share our thoughts. It's where words become collective, where personal expression turns into cultural momentum, when millions of people repeat the same phrases, whether it's toxic, unfair, or we're doomed. Those words don't just describe reality. They create a shared emotional field, a kind of collective frequency. Think of it as a digital ripple effect. One small post, multiplied across screens, becomes a social mood. This is what makes language online so powerful. It's not just what you say, it's what you help amplify. When vocabulary like crisis, broken system, or hopeless dominates the feed, it wires the collective nervous system into a state of chronic stress. Not because these issues aren't real, they are, but because the framing becomes a loop of despair, rather than a catalyst for change. That's the danger of repetition. The more a word is used, the more real it feels. The more often we hear phrases like, "Nothing ever changes" or "Everyone's corrupt," the more likely we are to believe and embody them. It's not just social, it's neurological. Language repeated in large numbers starts to feel like truth, regardless of its accuracy or usefulness. It forms what we might call a negative energy field, a mental and emotional atmosphere that can drag people into cynicism, apathy, or helplessness. But here's the hopeful part. Energy flows both ways. A study by researchers at MIT found that positive content, when shared intentionally and authentically, spreads 70% more effectively than negative content. That's a surprising fact, in a time when outrage seems to dominate. But it turns out, people do respond to uplifting messages if those messages feel real, specific, and emotionally resonant. A vague "stay positive" won't do it, but a powerful story of someone overcoming odds, or a genuine reflection on gratitude or growth, can move faster and further than most rants. This doesn't mean we should ignore injustice or sugarcoat problems. In fact, avoiding reality is its own kind of toxicity. The point isn't to mute difficult conversations, it's to shift the lens through which we engage with them. Instead of repeating, "Everything is broken," we might ask, "What's one thing that's working, and how can we build on it?" That small reframe changes the energy of the conversation. It opens space for agency. So next time you post, comment, or share, pause for a second. Ask yourself, what energy am I contributing? Are these words helping someone think more clearly, feel more hopeful, or take meaningful action? Or are they just adding to the fog? We often underestimate the power of our digital voice. But the truth is, words online don't stay on screen. They travel, they echo. And when enough people say the same thing, it starts to shape what we believe is possible. Not just individually, but as a culture. In the age of algorithms, language is currency. Spend it wisely. Rewiring your brain doesn't take years. It just takes consistency. Neuroscience has shown that the brain is like a muscle. It strengthens whatever you use repeatedly. That includes language. The words you think, speak, and absorb every day create mental pathways. And if you're willing to commit to a short, simple practice, you can reshape those pathways in just 21 days. This isn't about pretending life is perfect or chanting hollow phrases. It's about retraining your brain to respond to life with clarity, resilience, and intention through the way you use words. Let's break it down into 3 levels of practice, each one building on the next. You can start where you are and go at your own pace, but consistency is key. Level 1. Awareness of self-talk. Catch and convert. Start with the inner voice. For 1 week, carry a small notebook. Use your phone's notes app, or keep a Google Doc open. Your goal is simple. Catch yourself when you say or think something negative, especially habitual phrases like, "I'm so bad at this," "I'll never get it right," "I'm not good enough." Each time, write it down, then immediately rewrite it. in a more neutral or positive form, one that feels believable, not fake. For example, I'm so bad at this, I'm still learning this. I'll never get it right, I'm figuring it out, one step at a time. I'm not good enough, I'm working on showing up as my best self. The point isn't forced positivity, it's emotional accuracy and mental direction. You're interrupting old loops and offering your brain a new path. Level 2. Affirmation programming morning, noon, and night. Once you're more aware of your self-talk, layer in conscious affirmation routines. 3 times a day, morning, midday, and night. Say a few affirmations out loud that feel emotionally resonant. These aren't magic words, they're focused tools. Choose or write phrases like, I'm building trust in myself. I have the tools to handle this moment. Each day, I'm becoming more grounded. Say them with presence. Feel the words. Breathe as you speak. This helps anchor them, not just in thought, but in your nervous system. Pro tip: combine this with movement. Say affirmations while walking, stretching, or standing in a power pose. Research from Harvard shows that combining posture and language boosts confidence and lowers stress hormones. Level 3. Curating your digital input energy audit. Your inner world is shaped by what you feed it. Take a look at your social media. Who are you following? What kind of language shows up on your feed? Is it mostly complaints, sarcasm, outrage, or negativity? For the next 21 days, unfollow or mute any account that drains your mental energy. Replace them with voices that uplift, challenge, and inspire. Follow creators who talk about growth, creativity, resilience, or emotional intelligence. Not because they're perfect, but because they point your mind in a better direction. MIT research confirms that emotional content spreads fast. So make sure what you absorb is aligned with the mindset you want to build. Mini challenges. Build the habit in waves. Changing habits doesn't have to be all or nothing. James Clear in Atomic Habits shows that small, consistent changes lead to massive long-term impact. So if 21 days feels like too much, start smaller. 1-day challenge. Just notice your self-talk for a full day. No pressure to fix, just observe and write. A 3-day challenge. Practice both catching negative language and saying 3 affirmations a day. 7-day challenge. Add in a digital cleanse. Start unfollowing, muting, or curating your feed. 21-day reset. Go all in. Journal daily, practice affirmations, and create a clean, inspired digital environment. Final tip: stack with existing habits. To make this stick, pair your language practice with habits you already have. Right after brushing your teeth, say your morning affirmations. Before lunch, journal or voice record a thought you're reframing. During your evening scroll, swap 5 minutes of feed time for a short, inspiring podcast or post. Language isn't just communication, it's construction. Every word you use is shaping the architecture of your brain. And with just a few minutes a day, for a few weeks, you can start building something stronger, clearer, and more aligned with who you want to become. Words are, in my not-so-humble opinion, our most inexhaustible source of magic. J.K. Rowling. Language is more than a reflection of thought. It's a tool to reshape it. Every sentence we speak, whether out loud or quietly in our minds, becomes part of the blueprint for how we see ourselves and the world. That's why no real, lasting transformation can happen unless we begin by changing the way we speak, especially to ourselves. When we shift our words, we don't just change the conversation, we change our biology. We shift our emotional state. We open doors to new choices. This is the quiet power of language. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, but over time, it rewires everything. So let's return to the question we opened with. If every word you spoke was a spell, how would you use language to create magic in your life? The answer begins now, in how you talk about your dreams, your struggles, your identity, every phrase, is a step in the direction you're heading. If this message resonates with you, speak back. Like this video, if it stirred something inside you, drop a comment and share one sentence you're ready to reprogram in your life. And subscribe, not just to this channel, but to the version of you who uses words with power, clarity, and intention, because magic isn't out there. It's already in your mouth, waiting to be spoken.